Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is episode number 82. 82. I think we agreed on the last episode would be Mark Ingram. I'm Jim Whalen. Along with me always is Jerry Calla. Jerry took last week off. Sometimes the great Tim Daly said, sometimes life happens when you're planning stuff. So
There you go.
we both had stuff going on, so we didn't take last week off. But here we are, episode 87. A lot of stuff happening. Unfortunately, Giants lost their 12th straight road game, 6th straight overtime loss. Their first team mathematically eliminated from the postseason, and it's a second straight year that has occurred. And the worst run defense in the NFL, and that could be no shining moment more than Gibbs running down and ending Shane Bowen's career, and you had Bozeman in there. But the game was exciting, and about 1,000 yards of total offense. I thought Jameis Winston, the two games that he did play, he gave us a lot to look forward to. But once again, take away the third quarter, they could have been 5 wins. They could have been 7-3. So I mean, take away the third quarter. So like to hear what your thoughts are. I know you always like to spit some venom on there, and then also Shane Bowen has been relieved of his duties. So Jerry, what do you think about what's transpired in Giantland and where we are from here? Coaches search, game analysis, and the new DC.
I think it's one of the more frustrating years. I think we could agree on that because I forgot who it was this morning said tongue in cheek, this is the greatest 2-10 team in the history of the NFL. And I think you look at it, yesterday there's a lot of positive. Winston, the last 2 games played well. This is not about the offense. This is about the team cannot play with a lead. The team gives games away. It was the 5th time that they have done that. Did we expect them? And again, I think what is more frustrating is the right word, is it's against good teams. Yesterday, Detroit is a good team. The following, Chicago is a good team. The Broncos, are a good team. And it's very frustrating. And you just say to yourself, is this really happening again? And I think now, based on a lot of things, Malik Neighbors' tweet on X, which he took down, the frustration in Carl Banks's voice of all people, because I think Carl Banks is very well grounded in his assessment, even when he rips players or rip is a wrong word. When he critiques players and breaks down things, you heard the frustration in his voice with Lawrence being off the field and, handoff, boom, 6 points. If you blinked, you might have missed it. And it was another game where bizarre things occurred. Play calling was good. Then when it really needed to be, I would say, going back to the identity that you're trying to recreate, which is running the football. They don't run the football. They go for it on 4th down. The Lions could have used another timeout there. And it's just these games, these 5 losses, it's just been bizarre things taking place. Lawrence being off the field. If I would have told you, Jimmy, in August that as of today, Pro Football Focus has the Giants' offensive line grading at an 11, and that the issues would be more defensive, would be on defense. And we're really not talking about the line. I mean, they have the ability to not only move the ball, they're scoring points. The touchdown catch by Winston is probably going to go down as that might be the play of the year. Him coming back for the ball, then making a little move and scoring. That might be in my personal thing. That might be one of my favorite plays of all time.
Well, and Olszewski, I mean, he looked like they had him dead to rights, looked like a dead play, and then he moved to the and where he placed the ball too. He placed the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to hear about the injuries because the injuries weren't a factor, when they had a lead. Yes, they're missing neighbors. They got Scadaboo out. Thibodeau was out. I mean, listen, you talk about Abdul Carter. This is a guy that came in and he had the stones to request 56. I mean,
Yeah.
he get anywhere near the quarterback. And
Yeah. It's got a half a sack going into 11 games, so, I mean,
see it, Neighbors' tweet, the few times they showed Burns on the sideline, the frustration level is at an all-time high. And again, as you know, I've been calling for Shane Bowen to be fired for the last few weeks. And, sometimes you got to make a statement. You talk about accountability. And who would have thought that Shane Bowen would have been fired, or I should say, who would have thought that Brian Dable would have been fired before Shane Bowen, and it would have taken the interim coach to relieve Shane Bowen of his duties? Charlie Bullen is the linebackers coach, will be the interim defensive coordinator. And I got to be honest with you, at this point, I don't even think it really matters. You just, after yesterday, you needed to make a change, I think, for the sanity of the players. And while it would have been a great story with the aggressive play calling by Kafka, there's just a lot of things that are going on. And I'm not going to rule him out right now from getting this job, but I think that there's a smell in the building, and you need somebody to come in and to really just start this thing over because there's talent. You have a young quarterback. You have talent on both sides of the ball, and man, this has been a year. That I think nobody could have predicted would have. If I would have told you now if I would have told you in August that now the Giants would be 2-10 and they would have trouble scoring points and the defense would keep them in games and they'd be close, you'd be like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Now, who would have thought 2-10, November 24th, 3 days before Thanksgiving, that they're actually scoring points and they're scoring points against good teams? Nobody saw this coming. And again, it's disappointing. This is the earliest they ever been eliminated since 1976. And remember, in 76, it was a 14-game schedule. So it was very frustrating to sit there, to lose the game that you did. You just knew when that was going into overtime, you just started to feel it slipping through the cracks. And then you have arguably who everybody considers the best lineman, interior lineman in all of football. He's on the sideline in overtime, and result touchdown.
yeah. Well, I mean, a couple of things with the game, Jerry, and that's a great analysis. I think first off, I think everybody was uh, criticized Kafka for going for it on fourth down. I think that when you're 2-9, they're going for it, which I can kind of understand. I think if you kick the field goal, who knows if Detroit changed up their play calling, and they couldn't stop the run, and
That's been the theme all year.
yeah, and then the other thing too is like they win the toss and then he deferred. If you look at the game, the defense was gassed. I would at least took the ball and give my defense a chance to rest. And not only that, have they were moving on Detroit all game long, and I have to credit
Right.
Kafka for a great game plan. I mean, they moved the game. Winston showed you who he really was and what a leader he
Yeah.
could be. And I like the wrinkles that they did have, and that they did have. And the last two games that Kafka has taken over, they ran the ball well between Tracy and Singletary. They made more of an emphasis. And I would say the one person I think that probably deserves to stay is probably Carmen Pasillo, who the offensive line coach. Because if you look at the offensive
No
line,
question.
they're in sync. They're in sync.
Correct.
But I mean the Javon Holland penalty, giving them an extra 5 yards,
Mhm.
that
That
hurt.
was that was one word to describe that: utterly stupid. You're in the middle of the field. The official is next to you. You know it's getting called. Not only did you give them 5 yards, it stops the clock.
Yep. Yep. And then the play calling on fourth down, like I agree with you. Like why pass it, and then they could have used the third timeout. But once it went to overtime, my wife's like, like why even bother watching these games? Like here we go again. So
But
you know,
again,
not
like you
going,
said, 122, Tracy 62, Singletary 47, Winston 13. If my math is correct, that's 122 rushing yards, and then you have over almost 400 yards passing because Winston had 366 and Gunnar had the 33-yard touchdown, so that's 399. So you had over
yeah,
500 yards. It's
yeah.
ludicrous.
Yeah, and I think Kafka. I think this is one of the games he needed to kind of be in
Yes,
contention.
agreed.
But I think that if he went to Detroit, they were, they're a contender, and
Sure.
they gifted this game to Detroit, and also gave Detroit an ability to separate themselves from some other teams because I guess whatever 7-4, 6-5, 6-5 is a little bit tighter in the NFC than we were talking
Sure.
about with Dave Sergio, our producer before. Cowboys are 5-5, so but I don't know. It's another tough game to watch. I think in hindsight, 2020, I guess they probably should have kicked the field goal. But I mean, the way the games have been going, I guess they want to put this away. And then Winston also credits himself. He missed it for 4 inches. He did miss a couple passes, but I think you can't fault him for that. But I think Wandale Robinson had a monster game. He
Yeah, 9 catches.
yeah, equaled Ahmed St. Brown, and also I thought Cordell Flott had probably one of his best games, locking up Jamison Williams,
He did.
wide
He's been
receiver.
playing
So,
well. He's been
uh,
playing well.
but I mean, I think
Alexander too, your guy from Toledo.
yeah,
He
two
had a good
sacks,
game.
and then
Correct.
but I think that they were gassed, but at the end. But I don't know. So I think Kafka can still make a good offensive coordinator, but I don't know, a head coach. He might be something has to grow into. And I thought Theo Johnson really came up big in a lot of big
Yeah, he
spots.
played well. A
Yeah.
few catches. I
So
think he had 4 catches. Robinson had nine catches.
and I think
Tracy had 3 out of the backfield. He
yeah,
had 68 yards receiving.
yeah. I
But
mean,
Isaiah Hodgins again. Isaiah Hodgins had 2 catches and a touchdown. If you would have, this guy wasn't on the team 2 weeks ago, and he scored a touchdown before Hyatt did.
yeah. And then I don't know, but what do you think about Hyatt with that play against Green Bay? Yeah, I mean, do you think that being Jerry Calla, the GM, would you have cut him or would you have demoted him in that capacity
Here's
in
the
Green
thing,
Bay?
and I'm going to say this facetiously. Thank you for reopening that wound that was closed, the Green Bay
Okay,
wound, and
sorry.
and now we have the Detroit wound that's still fresh, but the Green Bay, two guys that Shane made a point of getting in the draft in that game was Hyatt, who stopped for no reason. Amani Tuma crucified him on this last week. Stopped, which led to an interception. And then you had, I don't know what it was, Deontay Banks it was less than a half-assed effort on a tackle when the ball carrier was like on the 4-yard line. It's just, and that's what I'm talking about. These things that are happening, it's just a bad look. You talk about the optics, people looking in from the outside. There's just a lot of bad football being played. Now you're down, you have an interim head coach, an interim offensive coordinator, an interim defensive coordinator, and for very good reason. But I just think you're at a point now where there is way too much talent, and they better, even in years past, right? More so than years past, they better get this right because you are in a position where with the right guy in charge, right, things could be changed and turned around, I think, quicker than people are willing to admit. I mean, like when I say bizarre things, right? And I actually had this conversation with my dad. You have a kicker who is 38 years old, who has had injury problems, but yet the head coach chose to roll the dice with him when he wasn't healthy, knowing his history, then that put you at a disadvantage where you didn't have a kicker. Then you have a kicker from the international program, right, who has very limited NFL experience. And then you bring in a guy who was a Pro Bowler and you opt not to dress him. And it's funny, right? Since Koo has been active, right, there's been no issue with extra points. There's been no issues at all with the kicking game. He missed the one against Green Bay where it was a penalty. It was a 40-something, 46-yard kick in the wind. He gets an excuse for that. And that's what I'm saying. It's just a lot of bad things, management-wise, fundamentally, bad penalties, and there's a lot of things going on. And I think there's a stink in the building, and it's almost amazing, right? If you think about it, right? What normally happens in football, right, is players are eliminated or we have a bad record, right? And you see the relation as much as people will deny it, right? Because, we're professional athletes, right? There's always a correlation usually to the effort put on the field, right? The ability to fight, the ability to overcome adversity. You're talking about this team went into Detroit, they went into Denver, right? And they should have won both of those games. So I don't know if that's really a credit on the coaching staff. I think that's a credit to the character and the professionalism of a lot of these guys, because and you see it on Burns' face yesterday. I think there's, most teams would have just packed it in. Oh, we're going to Detroit. We don't have our franchise quarterback. We have a very entertaining guy who basically used to be a starter. And the year he led the league in touchdowns, he also led the league in interceptions. And again, the effort was there. And it was just a matter of closing the game once again. And they could not do that. And there has to be a cleansing, I think, from top to bottom. Because now I would love to hear, right, what is really, now you already pretty much, you threw away the Evan Neal pick. We're not even going to get into who they could have taken then, right? You throw in the fact that you had Banks in the first round, right? You traded for Hyatt. Now you drafted, right? Imagine this year if the Giants didn't move up and get Dart, right? And their big quote unquote draft pick, third overall, would have been Carter, who in 12 games has a half a sack. And he just is a non-factor in any of these games. I just looked it up. I believe he had 4 tackles, right? And I don't want to minimize the guy, but they were very insignificant. I mean, he has not made he had 3 tackles and an assist. He has not made an impact at all. And you thought last week Green Bay was going to be the day. Then you come to find out that he was late. He was sleeping. He passed out. He was getting red light therapy.
They changed the meanings and everything. I mean,
and Tamon Fox started over him. And then you expect, okay, here he is coming into Detroit. Still no Thibodeau. More reps for him, on the edge. And you got zero. And this is a guy that was drafted 3rd, right? That flirted with, besides flirting with or wanting to wear 56, he also wanted to wear 11, which would have been a slap in the face to both of those guys for what they did for this organization. I mean, it is beyond. I know people are going to disagree with me on this about, he made the trade for Dart. I think Shane's got to go too.
Well, do you think that they're putting things in place by putting Chris Mara with a more active role?
That worries me.
That worries you in what regards? That he's
been there. Chris Mara has been there a very long time. He has the most famous, besides the Rooney name, the second most famous last name in the NFL. This is what we're talking about this organization, what drives you insane. Who else does that? What other NFL organization has a relative, right, in that position? You have to cleanse it. You have to cleanse it. Because, again, who is Joe Shane hiring? I know everybody thinks if if McDermott gets let go in Buffalo, right, he's the obvious choice, right? Who is coming? Like, if you really want to target somebody who's been around the league that has experience, right? Who is coming to work for Joe Schoen? It's not Ernie Accorsi. It's not George Young. Okay. It's not Bill Polian. We could keep going with names.
Yeah.
But it's just bizarre. And the whole Chris Mara thing, it's funny because I could swear you were reading my mind earlier, because that I had a conversation about this. It's just like, this is for an organization that is so classy, that is so renowned in all of sports, that is so renowned in the history of New York sports, right? That Giants do wacky things. Like, and I always say this, and it goes back to when McAdoo benches Eli, right? So you mean to tell me here's Ben McAdoo, right, in year 2, and I know I'm bouncing now, but this is another example. McAdoo in year 2, right, has the full autonomy, if you will, to make that decision to put Geno Smith in, right, to end the streak, and then you fire him because you claim you're firing him for doing that. At some point, right, the Giants have to remember, right, it's okay for somebody to step in. Maybe the head, like, oh, well, Dable picks the coaches, and I understand why. But there are just weird things that always surround, this organization, and it always remains on the conservative side. I think sometimes they're very conservative for the wrong reasons. Now, after yesterday, the light bulb goes on. Oh, we got to get rid of Shane Bowen. It's lunacy.
Well, and also,
It's lunacy.
I think the failure to, like you said, you screamed about Hudson. I think you had a, I think some of the players and coaches got to realize that, you're talking about people's jobs. You're talking about a lot of people's, Monday, we were talking to Dave Sturcio. He's a Dallas Cowboy fan. I mean, he's on cloud 9 after they beat the Super Bowl champion. So, people live and die with these teams. And I think that if you start, making people accountable, like you said last episode, and I think what you opened up with, with this is, talking about accountability and everything else. But, getting back to Abdul Carter, I mean, he was him and Scatterbo were at the WWE event. And listen, I think part of me doesn't have a problem with it because they're young and they want to get out. What are you going to do? Have them stay home and watch film all day long? I mean, Scatterbo is injured. On the other point, if I'm Kafka, I'm like, hey, listen, I'm coaching for this might be my only shot. I might become a head coach, and then my best player is out at a WWE event, and I guess he changed the days. I don't know if he changed the days off to accommodate for these kids to go out, but I mean, I don't know what your take is on a WWE event, and then I don't think that would fly with a Coughlin or a Bill Parcells. And we always go back to that. I mean, Coughlin had a problem with Jesse Palmer being the Bachelor way back when on the off season, but if they came off the Philly win or if they won Green Bay, okay, I could kind of see, all right, you're rewarding the guys, but coming off a loss. So what's your take on that?
I think that goes under optics. I think, you can say that, Kafka put it on the community people, they try to get these guys out and about. I get all that, but I will steer in the direction that you started, which is you have 2 wins. It's just a bad look. And I know a lot of people were like, oh, well, they're young. It's just a bad look. It's a bad look. I'll never forget this, right? Years ago, right? Years ago, it was the middle of the day, right? And now you're talking about Dable, right? We talked about James Hudson with his meltdown, right, in the Cowboy game with the penalties and accountability and different things that go on, right? And we're not in the building, right? But I think it's obviously it's been mentioned numerous times since Kafka, and big deal, right? It looks like big deal. Carter missed a meeting, missed a walkthrough. He sat a series, right? Ultimately, big deal, right? I don't think he left there saying, "Oh wow, this really killed me." Maybe he fined them. We don't know that, right? But years ago, I'll never forget this silly story. I'm with my wife. My daughter is really, really young, and it's like the middle of the day, and we run. I'm in Houlihan's in Secaucus, and I run into, of all people, Will Allen, and he's in there, and it's a day, right, where we're allegedly practicing, right? And he's in there with another female. I get it, young guy, right, doing what young people do. We're old guys now, but again, it's the optics. And then allegedly in that week, supposedly he had an issue with tardiness, and that's what I'm saying is sometimes, right, when nobody is running, when the inmates start running the asylum, and I get it, it's a nice thing. I'm a big WWE guy. I'm a big wrestling guy. I am well aware of the history of NFL players, right, being involved in the WWE. I think here's the difference, and I don't want to take up too much more time on this. You're in season and you have 2 wins, and you have one guy that has trouble showing up for things, a walkthrough, and then you have another guy that the day before was still zipping around in the scooter. And I get it. It's sports entertainment. It was quote unquote in a controlled environment. There were giant teammates, behind him. I think you move that to WrestleMania, right? Whatever, not even SummerSlam, but WrestleMania. It's out of season. I think it's different. You're in season, you have 2 wins. It's a bad, bad look. And, I get it that was put together in advance, but this is what I mean, right? So now you have a head coach. He's basically coaching, for his career to try to be a head coach, if you will. He's trying to get the ship on the right track. And now he's answering questions about guys, being at John Cena's testimonial last match, if you will. Again, they're like, well, this was put, and this is what I'm talking about with the Giants, like the Geno Smith situation. Well, this was put together, months ago. Okay, how about canceling it?
Yeah.
And it's like these things just happen, and then it's like, well, it's almost like they're so conservative, in different things, with certain things. It's so frustrating. Getting back to the product on the field, we know there's talent. We know there's talent defensively. They're just not connected. They're disjointed defensively, right? Obviously, that's coaching. Is Charlie Bulling going to come in and make a difference? He's in a tough spot. He takes over, right? Now you're going up Monday Night Football. I get it. You have a little extra prep time, but now you're going up, to play the Pats, who are having a good year. It doesn't get easier.
Yeah. They're the number 1 seed in the AFC. So, I mean,
Correct.
I agree with you on that. But, I mean, getting back to Shane Bowen, I was reading online somewhere. I think if Shane Bowen would have fired Shane Bowen. So I think that, I mean,
3 weeks ago.
He was 42 losses in 53 games as a DC coordinator. So
I saw that.
He didn't come in with a great resume, but I mean, just turn into the coaching.
Real quick, if you remember, when he was interviewing here, he was interviewing nowhere else. I thought that was telling for a guy that was, was already a defensive coordinator in the league. Usually, right, at a minimum, you have another you have another place that's interviewing.
Yeah, you're in demand. But I mean, I will agree with you, though. It looks like the players are playing hard. I mean, every
yes,
game
they are. You
are
can't
playing
question
hard. So, I mean, and I think that's a credit to somebody in that locker room. I don't know, it's the players or it's the captains or whatever else. But I mean, they're playing hard. But looking at the coaching search, I mean, Bill Parcells said in his biography, sometimes they heard all your stories, meaning that you have to have a new location. Do you think like a Harbaugh or a Mike Tomlin might be available? And you think that?
I mean, right now, one of the best things about the NFL is when you reach Thanksgiving, it's apparent that, certain teams are going to move on from their head coach. Certain guys are going to get fired. And, Mike Tomlin's intriguing. I don't think any of the Harbaugh brothers are going anywhere, but, you never know. And, I'm very intrigued by somebody like Mike Tomlin. I know the other day I was in a conversation with somebody and they were like, when's the last time you won a playoff game? But when's the last time Mike Tomlin, really had a good quarterback? And that was obviously Big Ben. I think he's somebody that, day one is instant credibility, obviously. And I think he's going to hold the players accountable. They'll definitely be better defensively. And the second thing is, now I think it would be interesting to see what he could do with bringing in the right offensive staff with somebody like Dart. So, I mean, again, and I'm not putting all my eggs in the Mike Tomlin basket. I'm just saying that that's an intriguing option.
Well, the only thing is Chris Mara is married to a Rooney, and also
Yeah.
he even named his daughter. Well, she goes by Rooney Mara. So I think that the two organizations definitely have a
there's connections there. Yeah.
So, and the other person I would like to see them bring in, Shea Tierney, I guess, is the QB coach. I like to see them if he's available. I know he's a little bit older, but Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians worked with Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Carson Palmer, Andrew Luck, and Tom Brady. I think somebody like that might be a good person for a 22-year-old quarterback in the NFL to learn from. Like I said, I know he stepped away from Tampa Bay. He was getting a little older, had some health issues, but I mean, I'd like to see him maybe work with Dart, even if he comes in on a adversarial thing, because I know that there was some mention that Dable still kept in contact with Dart even after he was fired, which I don't agree with, but what are you going to do? But anyway, we'll see.
Well, I mean, again, here's the thing, right? How much are they really communicating in season during the week? I mean, Dart, that's his first, NFL head coach. So I'm sure there's a personal bond. But, again, listen, as is life, like we know in the police department, a guy leaves, the show continues, you move on. And the Giants have definitely moved on. And it'll be interesting because, to be completely honest, I mean, after this New England game, all right, you start going there. There's some winnable games down the road. I mean,
Well, I think the New England game is winnable. I mean, the team is playing hard. I mean, I think it's winnable. A lot to see, but I mean, I like to
very
see
frustrating.
I like to see more blitz, and I like to see more pressure on a quarterback. But another thing that was announced this week is December 2nd. They're going to have the in-season Hard Knocks NFC East. I mean, what's your take on that? I can only imagine
they should burn the film, the Giants portion of it. I mean,
they should ask them not to participate.
I mean, it's.
But I mean, I don't know how after last season they signed off, the ownership signed off on that. I mean,
there's a little, because there's wacky things that go on.
Yeah. All right.
They couldn't get. It took them how long to get the kicking game? Right. But
and
I'll say this though. I'll say this really quick. As bad as yesterday was, it took me a long time to decipher and what I just watched. I needed to get out. I actually went food shopping, which I haven't gone with my wife. I haven't done that in a very, very long time. And then don't worry, I come back and I watch New York City FC, or as we call them in Harrison, the Smurfs or the Pigeons, defeat the Philadelphia Union. So now you got the Giant game going south. And now I really didn't need to see New York City win. And now they will go to Miami to take on Messi. And so that means New York City FC once again this will be the third time. The one time they advanced and won the cup. This will be the third time that they'll be in the conference finals. So that's another kick. While I was
gonna end it out with MLS, because I know that they're starting in spring of 2027. They're aligning with global soccer calendar. So I just, we had Marcelo Balboa on the show, and then, there was some debate about that. He didn't really care either way. But I mean, what do you think about that change happening, them going to the and also
I like it for this, because I think they consider themselves to be a top 10 league in the world. And I know I'm not going to get into that now, where I think they rank, but they consider themselves, as they should. The product is vastly improved, right? Now I think they're at a point, the Apple TV, The following is there. The product is better. Hey, you know what? Let's line up with the rest of the world. And I'm surprised that it passed. I really am. But I'm for it. I'm for it. I'm looking forward to it. What they're talking about doing is basically, for lack of a getting in depth now with it, they're looking at one table, kind of refiguring the whatchamacallit, the playoff format. But like, for example, I think right now the preliminary word is like it would be more geography based. So like Red Bull, Chicago, New York, Philly, they would kind of be in one division. They would play each other twice. I know I'm leaving somebody out of that group, and New England, and then basically you would play the West Coast teams once. So, so now you still have some strong geography rivalries developing. DC United, and then you play the West Coast squads, once a week. Once a year, and you'd kind of go from there. I'm for it. I'm for it. Hey, listen, everybody goes like this, right? You really going to go to Red Bull Arena in January? Listen, Jimmy, right now, next year, 26, right? February 28th, Red Bull's home opener against New England. So you're playing in February already. They used to start later in March. They made it earlier and earlier. Red Bulls open up February 21st in Orlando. Then they come back a week later, open up against New England. So I don't think the whole weather thing is much of an issue per se as people make it seem. It works in other places, where the weather is similar to us. So
well, they're playing in November. So now.
Yeah,
so I mean, so I think it just.
I think it's a great move, though, and I think if
you
remember, Marcelo was like, he wasn't worried. One thing that I took away, well, the many things, but the one thing that I took away from our interview with him was he said that he doesn't really see it being, now we're kind of in the height of NFL, NBA, so on and so forth, because it's just a different product. It's a different product.
Yeah. Well, I guess the benefits are, I guess, a strong transfer market, and then
absolutely,
and a better alignment with the international break, and then I guess it gives them more global. So I guess Don Garber called it one of the most important decisions in MLS history. So 30 years in, it's still a young league. So, but with that being said, we got
kudos to him, by the way. Doesn't get enough credit.
Well, he started off with the Metro Stars, right? So he was wasn't he?
Well, Garber came. Yeah. It's funny, when Garber came in as the commissioner, he actually came in to save the league, and it's amazing what he has done. 26 years later. He's been the commissioner since '99, and don't bring up the Metro Stars, because that's a sore subject on the Metro Stars to Red Bulls.
And
now it's remember, now the rebrand, Red Bull New York.
Red Bull New York. Okay. Well, we got on here late, so in the event of time, I would just like to thank Dave Sturgio and
Dave, enjoy the win.
And then absolutely.
Dave wants me to shout out Tony Miola.
Yeah, Tony Miola Carney. So he's got Carney ties.
Tony's doing very well. Tony is also an announcer. Overcame a recent cardiac event. So,
but with that, thanks to Dave to Chop Sports Media. He had a big week. Follow Dave on social media. Also follow Fight Factory. And I guess he was mentioned this week at be somebody to look out for if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, which we are not, but we will support Dave and everything but that. But with that, Jerry, I'll pass it along to you so you can close this episode out. So take it away, sir.
Well, I hope I'll say this. I'm going to close this out. This is a mental health session more than an episode, as we've been breaking down these last few horrific Giant losses. But on a serious note, thank you for joining us. Tune in next time as we will break down the Giants and the Pats. Have a great day. Great job, Jimmy. Thank you again, Dave. And we'll see everybody soon. Take care.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, too.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.